Story 1. Some student released a SoundCloud diss track about the vice principal and got expelled. Story 2. A girl in my high school had a huge crush on a guy who was not single. I do not know why she did this, but she sent nude photos of herself to the boyfriend. The girlfriend saw them and reported her to the police for distributing illegal content because she was only 16 or 17 years old. Story 3. We had a teacher grab a student by the neck and pin him against the wall. Instead of being fired immediately, the school said they would relieve him of his duties at the end of the year. This teacher then took to Twitter and started posting pictures of himself naked, tagging adult film actors, and asking if they would do scenes with him. He then tweeted a video of himself snorting cocaine and piercing his own nipples, again while completely naked. Some students found his Twitter page, and the news spread quickly the next day around school. About halfway through class, 2 police officers entered the room, arrested him, and carried him off the property. I have not heard anything about him since that day. Story 4. This is pretty bad. Mid-1980s. Our school had one security guard, who we barely needed, and who was predictably mocked and disliked. His 9th grade daughter, though, was sweet, pretty, and very nice, quiet and unassuming, popular without being cliquish, a bit of a metal and denim jacket and hairspray girl. I always liked her and we had friends in common, but she was dating an unpleasant guy. The guy that every other guy hates, even his friends. The guy that guys warn girls about, but they never listen because nobody who smiles that sweetly could be a bad person. Everyone must be just jealous or not really know him, so sweet when they're alone. Seriously, I hated this kid from the first time I heard about him damaging a sunroof. He cheated or something. I don't know. They broke up. Overnight, he and some friends broke into the school and made photocopies. Tens of thousands of photocopies. Pictures of her having sex, hardcore explicit, fluids on face, intimate and degrading, and about as graphic as you can get. They were stuffed into lockers all over the floor and walls. Windows had them spray tacked, and they turned up in drawers, library books, and rolled into maps for weeks after. While her father was in the school before students arrived, probably trying to frantically clean up, they spray-tacked his car and covered it with them. I never saw her again. Her father continued to work there. I wouldn't have. The person who did it was back after a short suspension and still had no trouble getting girls. Story 5. After The Dark Knight was released, a female student went into the bathroom, cut her mouth to look like the Joker, and tried to stab our Spanish teacher. Someone hit her with a chair and took the knife away from her. It was quite a wild incident. Story 6. I went to an expensive private high school full of wealthy students. Because of the school's interest in keeping everyone happy and how incredibly privileged some of these students were, I witnessed some things that probably would have gotten a person arrested or expelled in other circumstances. The most shocking story involved a student who was frequently the target of a bully. The bully discovered that the student was seriously allergic to peanuts, ate a Reese's peanut butter cup, licked his finger, and then chased the student around the cafeteria one day, trying to touch him while laughing maniacally. Unfortunately, there was not enough time for anyone to react before he was able to tap the student on the arm with his finger. The student swelled up like a puffer fish in anaphylaxis and had to go to the emergency room. The bully received a 2-week suspension. The student's parents wanted to press charges, but a settlement was made, and the whole incident was never spoken of again. Story 7. 5 guys in my junior year decided to have a contest to see who could get the most girls pregnant by the end of the year. Final scores: 5, 3, 3, 2, 1. I grew up in a relatively conservative and blue-collar town, so I always imagined 5 sets of parents banging on one guy's door, demanding marriage. What a horrible way to ruin your life, the lives of the girls, their families, and the babies. How embarrassing. Story 8. My 6th grade mathematics teacher was arrested for drugs about a year after I left elementary school. Turned out she used them in her car during lunch hour. No wonder she was strange after lunch. Story 9. Some students got into a fight over a jelly donut one morning. By lunchtime, it had escalated into campus-wide racial tensions. My friends and I were walking to Subway when 2 plainclothes officers appeared and ordered us to turn around and return to campus. During the last 15 minutes of lunch, The open quad in the center of campus became a mob of several hundred students. Two sophomore girls, one white and one black, got into a fight, and then their boyfriends joined in. The agricultural sciences teacher, wearing a Kevlar vest, was drop-kicked. Someone knocked down a police officer. Tasers and pepper spray were deployed by the school resource officer and one of the vice principals. I was caught in the middle of one section of the crowd when I suddenly heard a loud bullhorn. I turned to see a black and white Chevrolet Impala speeding across the grass straight toward me. City, county, and state police arrived with vehicles to disperse us. When I arrived at my next class, physical education, we were made to sit in the gym and listen for public address announcements. All buses were brought in early, and we were called by bus numbers and told to go directly to the bus or face severe consequences. Several officers in riot gear and with beanbag shotguns instructed us to stay on the sidewalks and board the buses without stopping. We were dismissed from school for several days, and when we returned, things were never the same. Lunch was shortened, the campus was closed, and underclassmen were permanently separated from senior classes. Story 10. My principal drove a small, lightweight car. One year, a group of the seniors worked together to pick it up and move it into the cafeteria as a senior prank. One time, my Latin teacher got drunk and threatened to harm my friend. Also, my history teacher used to come to school drunk until one day he stopped showing up. He had always jokingly said he was going to run away to Mexico. It turns out he actually did. He had no job, no money, and did not speak a word of Spanish. He lived there for about a decade before he was caught and sent back to the United States, where he moved to Texas and became a school principal. Story 11. I went to military school. One of the tactical officer course officers pulled a gun on a student. He was fired and promptly hired by a rival military school. My English teacher was a Vietnam veteran and a biker. Someone stole the knob to his old school radiator in the classroom around 1975, and he said until he got that exact knob back, he wouldn't turn on the heat and kept the windows open in winter. He wore a short-sleeve shirt while we were in our jackets, freezing. He kept a bucket by his desk containing whatever he felt like putting in it. Chalk dust from his erasers, pencil shavings, spit. He let it build up and often threatened to throw the bucket on anyone who fell asleep. I never saw him do it, but there were always rumors he had. What he did if you fell asleep was kick the bottom of your desk with his biking boots, hard. I saw him do that a lot. Funny enough, he was one of the best teachers I ever had. He introduced me to many concepts I had never been exposed to before. Wild things happened at that school. I think I am a little shaken from attending, honestly. Story 12. My high school was fine, but the school district I moved from was chaotic. The biggest story was that a teacher was caught having a lesbian relationship with a student behind her husband's back. When the student turned 18, the teacher divorced her husband and then they got married. I believe they are still together. Wild. Story 13. Senior skip day, and we all headed out to a desolate area to drink and hang out. One kid was riding up and down a dirt road on his dirt bike, which we all drove in on. I didn't see it, but about 25 minutes after we arrived, he lost control, went over the handlebars and hit a pine tree. The impact knocked his helmet off and he died instantly. It really killed the mood. Story 14. A group of senior students confronted the shop teacher and threatened to harm him if his students arrived with any more bruises. Story 15. The time this wannabe tough guy was deadlifting in gym class. He was straining so hard, he had an accident and it fell right out of his shorts onto the mats. The whole school knew by the end of the day. He never lived it down. Story 16. One year, the senior class started randomly selecting items around the school to disassemble or unscrew and leave around the school. Nothing huge, just small items. Outlet covers, teacher staplers, window locks, and so on. They would leave all the parts and screws at the scene so everything could be easily reassembled, but it still became a huge problem for teachers and janitors. This went on for months, over half the year, and nobody got caught until one of the perpetrators got cocky and started storing the disassembled pieces in their locker. Then, one day, during a random drug search that was standard protocol, the police opened one of the perpetrators' lockers, and everything they had taken fell onto the floor. The jig was officially up. The student with the locker informed on the 3 other kids, and all the guilty students became famous. Not infamous, but famous. The principal complimented them and admitted that none of them would have been caught if not for a moment of ridiculous luck during the random search. They ended up with a full-page photo in the yearbook titled, "The Screw Crew," funded by the teachers and staff. Their punishment? They were caught so close to the end of the school year that regular punishment wouldn't make a difference. So the staff decided they should come in for 2 weeks during summer break to help the janitors reassemble what they had destroyed and assist with other maintenance tasks. This made perfect sense since the maintenance staff were the only ones significantly impacted by their actions. The punishment fit the crime for that group. End of story. Story 17. In grade school, our principal was friends with Charles Barkley. We were told that if we brought in enough cans for the food drive, Charles Barkley would come to school and shave the principal's head. He did it. I can't remember if I was in 5th or 6th grade, but I got to meet him. I was very small for my age, but when Charles Barkley met me, he put his hand on my head, and it was huge. Story 18. The science teacher at school discovered me smoking marijuana. After confiscating it, he asked if I could meet him later in the day. He returned it to me when I went to his office, saying it was good material and asking if I could get him some. Story 19. There was a rumor that a man engaged in inappropriate behavior with a sheep on the agricultural farm, and the sheep clamped down on him so hard he could not get free. If you have ever handled a sheep during lambing season, you will know they can clamp down hard enough to leave marks and bruises on your hands. There is no confirmation if the story is true, but the rumor persisted for years. Story 20. I have 2 examples. Once there was a problem student disrupting the class of a teacher from an older generation. The teacher had finally had enough and shouted, "I will slap the black off of you." The teacher was forced into early retirement. In another case, our debate team went on a school-funded trip to New York for a debate competition. Some students obtained cocaine and brought it back to their school-funded hotel room, where they used it. The school had many wealthy students, so those students received only minor consequences, while the teacher who discovered and reported them was punished more severely. Story 21. When I was 16, I said hello to a girl at a party. The next school day, her boyfriend and 2 of his friends came to visit me in class. When my teacher turned them away, they went on a rampage and ended up choking the principal with his own tie. It was easily the most action I ever got from talking to girls at a party. Story 22. A rumor was going around that a student in my grade was involved with the attractive home economics teacher. Turned out that he was. No one believed him. I did not either, mainly because I was also involved with her and thought we had a future after I graduated at the end of the semester. To be young and naive. Story 23. Not my personal experience, but my friend's principal received a bomb threat via email and did not see it for 2 weeks. Story 24. A senior at my high school discovered that a bomb had been planted under his car when he backed out of his parking space at school. The bomb squad was called, and they stated it was a real bomb with real explosives but wired purposefully not to explode. His father had ripped off the Kansas City Italian mafia in a real estate development deal. This was their way of sending a message. Story 25. There was a girl who became pregnant. She was a preacher's daughter. She had been with about 40 men and told them all they were her first, which made it difficult to identify the father. In the end, it was narrowed down to one of her 2 twin brothers. They couldn't determine which one since both paternity tests were positive. Story 26. Honestly, the food fight. Last day, senior year. Huge high school with about 3,000 students. Cafeteria was about 3/4 the size of a football field, with maybe 200 to 300 students per lunch period. A student walked around saying, "At 12:14 food fight," and he could sell it. At 12:14 we heard food fight, and it went off. The student inadvertently looked straight at me as he shouted and hurled a handful of blueberries. I watched blueberries pick people off one by one in slow motion, and one hit my leg. I immediately took my plate of chicken nuggets. I had extra honey mustard that day, and frisbeed it into the madness. Throwing that plate felt better than throwing my cap at graduation. I took a moment to observe everything, and it was pandemonium. Lettuce and sandwiches flew everywhere, and people were screaming while covered in every condiment imaginable. I snapped to, grabbed my friend's slushie, bit out the straw like a grenade, and heaved it into the crowd. The whole thing lasted less than a minute, but that was all it took. The place looked like a war zone. By the end, all the tables in the middle were cleared out. Spaghetti was literally dropping from the 30-foot ceilings, and one girl lay nearly defeated in the center, covered by food from every station. It was like something you see in a movie. I will always feel lucky to have been a part of that. I still see the student who started it from time to time and thank him. The best part was, and still is, that not one person got in any trouble. Story 27. There was an English teacher no one liked. Everyone knew about her secret stash of whiskey in her drawer. She would sneak pours into her coffee. One time, some kids put ipecac in her whiskey, and she vomited during class shortly after. The worst incident was when some kids spiked her coffee with lysergic acid diethylamide. It was a chaotic scene, and she was eventually carried by emergency medical technicians into an ambulance. She was not seen for the rest of the year. Story 28. A substitute teacher and paraprofessional started a stepping team. The school principal strongly disliked this team, seemingly because of its cultural significance. She would review their routines and then cancel their performances at various assemblies, claiming they were violent or sexualized, when in fact it was just high-energy coordinated stomping, clapping, chanting, popping, and locking that resonated with the culture of black students at the school. At one assembly where she refused to allow them to perform, the cheerleading squad put on a highly sexualized performance. They lay on the gym floor and moved suggestively for about 45 seconds. They did this in response to the stepping team because those students recognized a clear double standard. After the cheerleaders' performance, the stepping team ran onto the stage and performed without permission. Everyone applauded, and I saw the teacher who led them leave the gym with pride on her face. She was fired. Story 29. My high school was located a mile away from the University of Washington. For decades, football players and other students from my high school had been breaking into the locker room and stealing everything. Jerseys, cleats, pads, and more. They got caught for obvious reasons, such as cleats with different numbers than their high school jersey and high-quality pads that the school district certainly could not afford. The incident that exposed everything was when someone wore a game-issued jersey to a game, and a security guard noticed it was not available to the public. It was a real game day jersey in pristine condition. The subsequent investigation led to a seizure of about $35,000 in stolen merchandise. The team had to forfeit 2 games, and it became a major issue. That being said, my high school football team was exceptionally bad. Almost all but 24 players quit. Their first game back was against a state powerhouse, on the road, during their homecoming. The other team suited up about 90 players. Everyone on my side played both offense and defense the entire game. They somehow won the game. It is the most insane upset in a football game I have ever seen. Story 30. A kid in the grade above me had a secret Instagram account where he posted pictures of himself in adult diapers. The captions were all about it being a diaper kink. He would write about how turned on he gets when he urinates himself. I unfortunately saw this with my own eyes and am paraphrasing. His stepbrother also went to our school, so someone brought it up to him because they were worried about the kid since he was still a minor at the time. His stepbrother just shook his head, looking disappointed, and said they had had problems with this before and were working on it. I think about that kid, now presumably a man somewhere out there, about once a week. I hope he is doing well. Story 31. A neighboring school in suburban Melbourne, Australia, herded a dozen cows to the second story of their library and locked them in overnight. Librarians were overwhelmed when they opened the library the next morning and struggled to get the cows to go down the stairs. Took most of the day. Story 32. Probably my disciplinary principal was intoxicated at homecoming and then caught a driving under the influence offense. He was back at the school after about a week. Story 33. The student who was showing a presentation from her flash drive had a thumbnail image that was inappropriate, and everyone saw it on the big screen. She was a senior right before graduation. Story 34. The chemistry teacher, a woman in her 30s, was difficult but also attractive. Someone found a semi-nude photo shoot she did in her early 20s, and the whole school had the pictures within an hour. It caused such a commotion at school that she had to take a couple of weeks off until the school year ended. Story 35. We had a bathroom all the way out by the football field. It was one of those cinder block, off-yellow painted buildings. One day, there was a line of students outside the bathroom. It turned out there was a girl giving oral sex in the stalls. Even now, I feel like it's a fake story, but I saw the line, I knew the people in line, and I know the girl who got caught and the boy who was with her. It was sad, honestly. Story 36. I have forgotten most of the wild stories from high school, but the student who defecated in his shorts will never be forgotten. Story 37. Somebody in our class spray-painted Class of 2010 in purple onto a pregnant cow that was part of an agriculture course. The unborn calf ended up dying, and about 10 to 15 seniors were questioned about it, including myself. Our school was monitoring social media statuses at the time, and many of the seniors were posting statuses like, "What are we doing for the senior prank?" or similar comments. Story 38. Our cosmetology teacher accidentally ran over a child on Halloween, and the child died. Story 39. On homecoming night my senior year, a group of seniors in my neighborhood had their houses toilet papered. Rumor had it that it was a junior girl, so we organized a large plan to get her back. About 20 to 30 of us met up and traveled in 5 to 6 cars to her house and returned the favor. You couldn't even see her house from the road, it was so bad. The junior was forced to get up and clean up our mess at around 2 a.m. It turned out it was not the junior, but the homecoming queen, a member of the senior class. She left right after receiving her crown at halftime with a couple of friends, committed the act, then returned before the end of the game. No one was the wiser. They were really sweet and had no idea about the revenge plot until after the fact, so it's not like they let us just terrorize that poor girl for no reason. Story 40. In our school, if there was a dispute about to become physical, the students were escorted to the gym and given boxing gloves. Story 41. A small group of departing seniors managed to copy the school-issued combination lock's master key. After a slow campaign of gradually turning down all the motion detecting and security camera activating light sensors, they broke into the school overnight and swapped the locks on almost every locker. The administration had to bolt cut nearly all the locks and completely reissue every student a new combination lock. It was chaos. Story 42. I grew up in a suburban farm town outside of Boston. I graduated from a small public high school with a graduating class of 150 in 2005. It was a privileged, predominantly white, sheltered, high-achieving environment. Everyone knew one another and got along remarkably well. We partied together, drank a lot, smoked a lot, but that was the extent of it. Our friend Matt was the youngest in his family by 8 years, so he was the first one corrupted by his older siblings when he was arguably too young. He was the one who came around with weed in 7th grade to softly corrupt the rest of us. Fast forward to the second semester of my junior year of high school. Matt was a low-key drug dealer selling marijuana and was kind of the ringleader of 5 to 7 underclassmen who were your textbook stoners. Perpetually high, always smelling like body spray. Super nice guys but maligned by the administration. Looking back, it was understandable. None of them put effort into academics, and the school always reeked of marijuana. They arrived to school high and smoked in the bathrooms but seemingly never got caught. They evaded the faculty, catching them so long that teachers began to take shifts on their breaks patrolling the bathrooms. An overzealous administration was hellbent on catching them but incapable of doing so. Then we went home for the summer. At the beginning of my senior year, Matt befriended a man named Tim who was a couple of years older than us. He was fresh out of college and shadowing our gym teacher for a graduate school program. If we were 18, he was probably 23 or 24. He was not a teacher but took the lead from time to time in gym class, setting up whatever sport we were playing. Most of us paid him little mind, but he definitely gravitated towards Matt and the other stoners. He didn't come to any parties, but we saw him outside of school from time to time hanging with Matt. Months passed. One Friday afternoon, the final bell rang for the week, and the whole school exited their classrooms, funneling out through the double doors by the library. From the other end of the library, Matt suddenly turned a corner, sprinting towards the crowd. Moments later, Several police officers turned the corner giving chase. Matt plowed through kids who tried to move against the walls of a narrow hallway as they came charging through. As Matt reached a large common area outside of the library, he was tackled by a police officer right at the feet of dozens of us watching in total bewilderment. Matt was handcuffed and hoisted up by two officers when our brains suddenly imploded. We all immediately recognized one of them. It turned out Tim was not a college graduate, but an undercover police officer hired by the administration to bring down Matt. Over a couple of months, Tim gained Matt's trust and got him to sell a substantial amount of marijuana to him for a high school drug dealer. It was a foolish move, but honestly, the whole thing felt like entrapment. But they got him. Everyone was in shock. Even our gym teacher was in the dark, having to entertain this fake graduate student and fill out fake paperwork on behalf of his fake graduate program. He was livid. To this day, my friends and I wonder if the administration planned for it to be a public arrest and humiliation of Matt in front of the whole school, or if they hadn't considered what would happen if Matt tried to run like he did. In the days that followed, as the shock began to fade, there seemed to be a general consensus around school that it was strange Tim was supposedly going to school for something related to physical education when he was an absolute failure at every sport we played in gym class. We should have known. Matt eventually got his life together. The end. Story 43. When a girl accused my friend and me of trying to assault her at a donut shop across the street from our high school at 7 a.m. because she heard us say, "I take that." We were actually talking about her Ford Mustang. We had no idea she was even in the car or who she was. She was a junior and we were sophomores, so we had never met her. We had mutual friends who defended us, saying we would never do that. Even worse, the police questioned us without our parents present. We were only 16 at the time. We never saw her on campus. She was acting entitled in 2002 before it was even a known term. Story 44. My high school gym teacher, Mr. T, was involved in an inappropriate relationship with a girl from the middle school swim team that he coached. This reportedly went on for years, with encounters occurring at school, town parks, the girl's parents' house, and his own house. He was married with children. He gave all the students in his classes nicknames. For example, I was the American Dream, and my friend was Sick Boy. He also had his own unusual phrases, such as saying the hugivity levels are off the chart, instead of something was very wrong. After realizing his inappropriate behavior, we noticed many red flags, including how he gave my friend Liz the nickname Sexy Liz. It is surprising that this did not raise more concern at the time. Additionally, a few years after I graduated, a man stabbed about 20 children with two chef's knives. There was also a student who wore a fake pregnant belly under her shirt, called in a bomb threat, and was expelled. Story 45. I led a friendly crow into the school by leaving a trail of food. When it got in, it entered the cafeteria and attacked the vice principal. This was one of my crowning achievements, but not even close to the craziest event that happened at my school. Story 46. There was one time when I decided to use the smartboard to play Minecraft. The computer it was using was really outdated. It had a Pentium processor with Windows 7. I secretly brought a keyboard, mouse, and a USB drive which had Minecraft version 1.0 inside it. Each lunch break, the class would be completely empty for about an hour. For 4 years, I secretly played Minecraft the whole time without anyone knowing, except for a few students who came to the class during lunch break to watch me play. I spent those 4 years of lunch breaks playing on the same survival world, in which I built a city and even a massive castle with countless rooms filled with diamond blocks. It was really fun, but sadly the fun ended after I graduated. The save file and the Minecraft folder are still inside the computer, waiting to be played. Story 47. I had a classmate who completely lost control and started doing all kinds of things like beating up people and defecating in the bathroom lamp bowl on a Friday afternoon. He also tried to break into a locker with a stiletto knife, but when a teacher saw him, he hid the knife in his underwear. The knife accidentally opened, and somehow he managed to get out of the situation and go home with injuries without the teacher finding out. Story 48. Our campus police officer started dating a student at the school. They kept it quiet, so nobody knew until after she graduated. They both swore that nothing sexual happened until she was 18. A couple of years after she graduated, they got married. He eventually moved on from being a campus police officer to being a regular beat officer. He got his back injured on the job, and his doctor prescribed him oxycodone, which he promptly became addicted to. He ended up getting caught holding up a pharmacy with his service pistol to get more. He is probably out of prison by now. This happened about 20 years ago. It is unknown if his wife stayed with him. Story 49. A girl discovered that her boyfriend was cheating on her with another girl. She then seduced the other girl and dated her. A few years ago, they got married. She is definitely playing the long game. Story 50. In high school, a small group of us would go to the nearby park and play pickup basketball. One afternoon, the cheerleaders decided they wanted to use the area to make the homecoming banners for the school. So the place was packed. Maybe 100 high school students all in all. The usual people were there shooting hoops when a fight broke out between two of them. They were cousins. I grew up in a small southern town. A third person got involved and it turned into a 2-on-1, also a cousin. The person being attacked said, "Forget this." Went to his car, grabbed a shotgun, pulled it out, and started firing indiscriminately at his attackers who were running into the crowd. 5 shots from range. Later, when I was taken to the police station to help file a report, I saw one of the people involved in the fight. He had been hit. I told the police what I saw and talked to the victim for a minute afterward to make sure he was okay. He said he was fine, got a little grazed, but it was birdshot, so it was not a big deal. In fact, he called his attacker a name because it was just birdshot. We all showed up for school the next day. No charges were filed. The 3 involved in the incident were all there. It turned out that since it was birdshot, the police kind of laughed it off as a prank, and since all the parties involved were related, no charges were filed. We all played in the football game that week. I could not tell you who we played or if we won, but the images from that afternoon of homecoming preparation still stick with me to this day. I am almost 50. Story 51. A friend rollerbladed down a mountain in complete darkness, tripping multiple times and lived to tell about it. He made it the whole way down despite traffic. The person was very brave. Story 52. The quarterback was a very arrogant person, someone everyone loved but who bullied others, especially those who did not like sports and thought they were pointless. I remember seeing him blind with rage and tears, with his girlfriend consoling him. He was complaining about someone who told him that his life's high point would only ever be high school and that he was going nowhere in life. He ranted about his chances of making a living from football, how no one liked him. They were just afraid of him or felt sorry for him. Older people praised him because of their blind love of football, but he believed his life was pointless even if he did get into the National Football League. A few weeks later, I found out how poor his grades were. The water bottle he always carried was filled with vodka. He was caught and suspended from football for a while. From what I learned, his parents are rich, but he flunked out of college despite getting in. He was also abusive. Story 53. School dances were banned in my school because a Year 11 student, about 16 or 17 years old, had convinced a Year 7 student, around 12 or 13, to perform oral sex behind the curtains in the hall. Edited to add, many students were blaming the girl. I am glad that I had good parents who explained to me why the blame should lie with the older boy. Story 54. Not sure if it's really that wild, but one day a group of our school pranksters removed the door of our deputy head's office and left a $100 fine notice, like a real official police document, on the wall. They received mild punishment, as they were liked among teachers and their other pranks were harmless and mostly wholesome. Still makes me laugh to this day. Story 55. An English teacher was caught installing cameras in the girls' bathroom. The cameras were connected to his school-issued computer, which recorded everything, leading to his easy capture. Authorities obtained a search warrant for his home and discovered methamphetamine and child pornography. He was arrested, imprisoned, released, and subsequently lost his teaching license and credentials. He then worked at Starbucks but installed another camera in the bathroom and was caught again, resulting in immediate imprisonment. Story 56. Someone once jumped down under the pit platform in our theater and broke their legs trying to get their phone. Story 57. A coach at another school had been having relationships with cheerleaders for years. When he was caught, he received immunity for helping the authorities catch the people who were embezzling from the school. Story 58. A homeless methamphetamine addict entered the choir class and exposed himself to everyone. Story 59. Not that insane, but I remember one time one of the mathematics teachers left his car parked on a hill but forgot to put on the handbrake. It started rolling, and someone a couple of years above me got a video of him chasing it, with the caption, "Easy on the bones, mate. Not super crazy, but memorable." Story 60. Normal day, eating lunch on the quad when a gang member ran onto campus and started hitting a student, who was also a gang member, with a metal pipe in the head. The victim's skull was exposed and there was blood everywhere. The attacker then ran off. There is no information if he was ever caught, but the other individual was never seen again. He survived, though. Story 61. We had a basketball coach in the 1970s and 1980s who impregnated several underage students. Everyone knew, but no one really cared. He is still renowned by the state for his coaching and spoken about very highly. Story 62. A group of popular young men got bored, got intoxicated, broke into the school, spilled gasoline everywhere, and attempted to burn the school down. Everyone knew who was responsible, but no one was held accountable. They are all now leaders and pillars in that community, as often happens in small towns. Story 63. Curtis was caught engaging in inappropriate behavior in the middle school bathroom. Everyone, including myself, gave him the nickname Squirtus. The following year, he died in a house fire after safely getting his family out. Everyone I spoke to about it felt awful. They honored him in the yearbook that year. Story 64. Every Halloween, our high school held a Halloween night dance for the students in the gymnasium. The event featured decorations, music, food, drinks with no alcohol, candy, a chocolate fountain, and dancing. During one particular Halloween dance when I was in 10th or 11th grade, a group of teenagers decided to smoke marijuana outside the school near the gymnasium. They were caught by a chaperone who noticed the smell and went outside to investigate, as a couple of exit doors had been left open to cool down the gym. Later, a fight broke out after someone became intoxicated from drinking beer they had sneaked in and made an offensive comment. The police were called, and they broke up the fight. Some people were arrested, including the teenagers who smoked marijuana and the individual who got drunk. The next day, teachers and principals gave us a lecture about the dangers of marijuana and alcohol and condemned how the dance had turned out. As a result, they announced that it would be the last Halloween dance ever held because of what could happen. Everyone was upset, especially with the teenagers who used substances and the person who drank alcohol. I did not know about these events at the time because I did not attend the dance. I only found out during the lecture. Those were good old days of high school. Story 65. A boy who used to sit in front of me in mathematics class shot a girl and her brother because she broke up with him. She survived, but her brother did not. Rest in peace, Jamie. Story 66. One student brought a firearm to school, pulled it out in class, and made threats. No one was injured, but the student was expelled. Another student took an inappropriate photo in class, ensuring the teacher was in the background, and then posted it on social media. The school found out and the student was expelled. Guess which student was allowed to attend prom? Hint: it was the one who attempted a mass shooting. Story 67. An object being launched from table to table across the communal area while we had our morning break. Very sitcom-like. Story 68. In high school, we had a strict teacher everyone feared. One day during a test, my friend faked a sneeze, then suddenly stood up and yelled, "I am allergic to exams." The whole class burst out laughing, but we all thought he was doomed. Shockingly, the teacher cracked a smile and said, "Me too. Let's just cancel the test." And just like that, we got out of a major exam. It was the first and last time we saw that teacher smile. Story 69. One day, a man climbed onto the roof wearing a gorilla costume, and it took 5 adults to get him down. He did not get in serious trouble, but they confiscated the costume until the end of the year. At the last high school assembly for our class, the principal walked out wearing the gorilla suit. The entire place erupted with excitement. That principal was a really good person, and not just because of that. Story 70. My friend got into a prestigious boarding school, so we had a feast in the cafeteria to send them off. The table was set with a tablecloth, china, candles with paper flames taped on, a rotisserie chicken that ended up being thrown over the crowd down the hallway during the transition, and other items. Story 71. One of the girls who was in the same grade as me and was also in the color guard had an affair with the band teacher. The news came out soon after graduation, so I do not know how long their relationship had been going on or when it started. I also do not know what happened to the teacher. Oh, and this girl was actually my ex. We dated freshman year. Story 72. We had a teacher engaging in inappropriate conduct with students. The students who reported her were suspended for lying. 6 months later, she was arrested for inappropriate relations with a 15-year-old. Story 73. Someone wrote, "At noon the school goes boom," on a wall somewhere, which understandably prompted a massive evacuation followed by a large police and fire department response. I don't think they ever caught who wrote the threat, but that was a wild day. Story 74. 1. A student in my year had a strong foot fetish when we were in year 11, so we were all 16 years old. He went around asking all the girls to show him their feet. He even offered to pay one girl to come to school without shoes on and kept harassing another girl. They had to involve the police. 2. A different student in my year was known for hitting people, including girls. One day, some boys were mocking his surname, and he beat one of them so badly that he was put in intensive care. This student was a literal psycho. When we were doing our general certificate of secondary education exams, he and his father even beat a kid up in the street on the day of our mathematics exam. I actually have no idea how he has friends, a girlfriend, or anything. Story 75. When I went to high school, not much stands out except for a really awful suicide pact among a group of friends and the choir teacher grooming one of the senior girls. They ended up married, and he is a youth pastor now. When I was teaching at a high school, there were many memorable moments. The one that stands out was a huge fight between a couple of girls in the lobby. It ended with a crowd of over 100 students cheering and recording, and a boy triumphantly holding the loser's hairpiece over his head. That picture circulated for a couple of weeks. There was also a standing rule that every single student had to submit to a breathalyzer test before entering school dances. Story 76. One wild story I will never forget from high school is when a group of friends and I decided to sneak into the school pool after hours. We got caught by the security guard, but instead of getting in trouble, he joined us for an impromptu midnight swim. It was unexpected and hilarious, and it became one of our favorite memories. Story 77. An economics teacher suddenly left because a student asked for an autograph after a band played a concert. Later, she was found in a situation involving the band. Story 78. Someone kept vandalizing the boys' change room, breaking hooks off the wall. It was mentioned in assembly the following week that this is not acceptable and must stop. The next week, a few more incidents occurred. At the next assembly, we were warned that this would not be tolerated any longer and there would be consequences if it happened again. Of course, it happened again. At the following assembly, it was announced that the change rooms were now closed after the vandalism, and the boys would all change for physical education and after-school sports in the quad outside the change rooms, which faces about 16 classrooms. There was obvious panic from the boys, hysterical laughter from the girls, and the principal saying, "I told you there would be consequences." It was 1989, and the parents agreed with the discipline, so all of us endured 4 months of having to strip off twice a week in front of half the school at a time to switch from uniforms to physical education kits and back again. It also happened after school, so any parent coming into the office from the parking area for a meeting, as well as any visiting school team playing us, got quite the eyeful. I was only in grade 8, the youngest year at high school since middle school was not a thing in South Africa, and all the girls in our classes would take notes and tell us the next time they saw us what color underwear we were wearing. Also, it was the 1980s in South Africa. Boxers were never a thing here, and boxer briefs had not been invented yet and only arrived as trunks in the early 2000s anyway. So it was wall-to-wall tiny little briefs in every color and pattern you could think of, leaving little to the imagination. What was probably the most amusing in hindsight was the indignation when they got it wrong. Hey everybody, did you know Kali is wearing pink underpants today? Which always got a squeal of laughter from the girls. They are not pink. They're white with very thin red stripes. They just look pink from a distance. I do not own pink underpants. Story 79. This story involves me. I was a senior in high school. In my last field hockey game of the season, I took a field hockey ball to the forehead. My skin burst, and blood spewed everywhere. A teammate tore off the top layer of her shirt to use as a compression material for my wound. I was taken to the emergency room and received 55 stitches above my eyebrow. I begged my mom to let me stay home the next day. That morning, the announcements asked everyone to think of me, saying I was on life support and almost dead. My brother, a freshman at the school, panicked, thinking I was dying. In reality, I was at home watching The Maury Show. Story 80. My senior year in high school, we collectively elected a girl with Down syndrome to be our homecoming queen because everyone loved her. Her first runner-up was also in the special needs program. It was an amazing experience. Edit. It appears that they made a movie about her life titled Princess is a Queen. Story 81. I was in high school around when Ocean's 11 came out. As a senior prank, my friends and I devised a plan to steal all the chips at our school's Monte Carlo night, which was our spring dance. I wasn't the brains of the operation. They found a way to cut the power to the entire gym for at least 30 seconds. My job was to grab as many chips from the table as possible during the chaos and put them into my bag without being caught or looking obvious. The chips were exchanged for raffle tickets for prizes at the end of the night. We won a bunch of cool stuff, but the best part was completely getting away with it. No one got in trouble or was even suspected. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.